the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, and we're streaming live on YouTube, youtube.com/@the-team980, and it's our pleasure to welcome back to the show our guy Trey Wingo. He's got a brand new podcast that sounds really, really cool coming out that we'll talk about. And actually, Trey, I was going to say in a minute, but I want to talk about this first because you've been doing a podcast series for a little while called Half Forgotten History, if I'm remembering correctly. And this sounds like a bit of a spin-off on that, where you look at some very pivotal moments in the history of sports and what could have happened if things went the other way. It's called Making Waves. What more can you tell us about it?
Yeah, Craig, always good to talk to you, man. It's just kind of a what-if scenario, right? Like, there's sort of there was a movie that came out in the late 90s called Sliding Doors, and the whole premise was that, I think it was Gwyneth Paltrow was the star of the train, and she made the doors of the train car were sliding, and in one scenario, she gets on the train, and that's how her life unfolds. And in the other scenario, she doesn't get on the train, and their life unfolds completely differently. So it's taking a certain point in history and how it might affect the things that happen around it in sports. For example, a really interesting one might be what happens if Dan Snyder doesn't buy the Redskins? What if they didn't approve him as an owner? How differently might things have been? What happened if the Dallas Cowboys don't make, or the Vikings don't agree to, the Herschel Walker trade in 1989? How those two franchises went in completely different directions based on that one thing. And so that's sort of the premise we'll be working with. And, I'm a big buff of history as well as sports. So we're going to also take things that, that happened from a historical perspective outside of sports and how they might have affected what happened in sports at that time. So it's going to be a combination of all those things.
So is it something where you've got, the list of possibilities is endless here.
Yeah.
So how are you trying to narrow down like what makes it, an episode worth doing, especially in season one of this?
Well, that's a great question, actually. And I think what we're going to try and do in season one is not limited, right? I think let's take advantage of every possible scenario and find out what works best. And from there, we'll sort of work backwards. It's like if you're playing golf and a lot of people worried about and the instructor will say, no. Work backwards. Work from the putting and the chipping and getting the ball onto the green. Then we'll go back that way. So I think we're going to focus it on the core thesis and then work our way back from there.
So I feel like a lot of times these ideas start because you have one that keeps coming up. You talk about it you over beers or whatever with your buddies. Is there one of those that kind of spawned the idea that then you realize, well, what if we did it about this? What if we did this? Oh man, we have a podcast series here. Like what was Patient Zero?
Well, I'm not sure that we've always sort of had these discussions about, certain things that happen during the football season. Like to me, a game is like a river. One thing happens in the game that changes the course of the entire game based on momentum. So I've always sort of looked at not only seasons, but individual games as what was the turning point? What was the thing that flipped the switch? And if that didn't happen, like for example, Super Bowl 54, right? That epic comeback by the Chiefs. Mm-hmm. Jimmy G had Emmanuel Sanders wide open for what would have been a go-ahead touchdown with about a minute to play. And what happens if Jimmy G hits Emmanuel Sanders? He overthrew him by 5 yards or 10 yards. You can go back and look at it. He had beaten double coverage. He was alone back there. So maybe the 49ers hang on to win that game. And maybe Jimmy G is cemented as the quarterback and is still playing there. And maybe Patrick Mahomes is that guy that starts to look like Dan Marino, who all of a sudden, hey, it's great. He's putting up all these numbers, but he hasn't taken a team to a championship. So it's just little things like that I think really spark the interest and can take you a million different ways.
Yeah, then I think it was the next year, if my chronology is right. You have Goff missing whoever it was, Cooks, I think, wide open in the end zone. Like
correct.
That's
correct.
Those things happen, especially in the NFL, because there's only 17 of them every year. Only 17 regular season games. Like that is what makes the sport great. Trey Wingo's with us here on the Hoffman Show again. The podcast is called Making Waves. It's from Wondery. It'll be coming out hopefully later this fall. Trey, early next year. What's the plan?
It should be coming up in the next couple of months. So we're really excited about that.
Awesome. So very much looking forward to that. And by the way, could have a great marketing opportunity just on every sports radio show in the country. Just sponsor the Sliding Doors moment of the week. Brought to you by.
There you go.
I'm just saying,
Boom.
we can get our sales department in touch with yours.
I feel a collaboration coming, Craig.
Excellent. My life dreams have come true. Collaborate with Wingo on a brand new podcast. All right. Speaking of history, though, you used to year in, year out be on the desk for ESPN at the Hall of Fame ceremonies, and from talking to you over the years, like I know how much you love that. I know how much you love the history of football specifically. So what's it like? I mean, the game tonight is whatever. The Hall of Fame game, that is the nature of it. By definition, it is whatever. But to be in Canton on Hall of Fame weekend, what's that like?
It's very interesting because like the game itself, and I don't want to be dismissive here, but the game itself is sort of like, oh, look, there's background noise. Hey, look, hey, football. Because, Aaron Rodgers isn't going to play. Deshaun Watson, like most of the starters aren't going to play. It's just sort of this exercise in, hey, the familiar has returned, So that's sort of what the game is. The experience of the weekend for me has always been the Friday night gold jacket dinner. And that's the time where the Hall of Famers get to put on their gold Hall of Fame jacket for the first time. It's presented to them on stage with their family, and their presenter puts it on them, and in perfect scenario, all these people are still alive and with us. And the emotions that those guys go through, because football to me, and I think I've shared this with you many times and your listeners, it's the ultimate team game. Like, baseball is a one-on-one confrontation with a pitcher and a batter, and everybody else is standing around to see what happens. Basketball, you can have two of the best players, and that's really all you need. In hockey or soccer, a goalie flips the script completely. A good one can win you games, and a bad one can take you out of them. Football is the only sport where it's all about the team. It's the collective we. We're all in this together. We've got to pull together 11 guys on one side of the ball, or we don't get anything accomplished. And then the Hall of Fame is completely individual honor. And it's just a very different thing. It's a different dynamic. It's a time in a football player's life where you're not recognized for the things you did together, but the things that you accomplished individually. And it hits people very differently. It hits players very differently. It's very emotional, and it's really, especially for guys that have had to wait, in some cases, far too effing long to see that come to fruition. It's just different than any other thing I can explain to you.
Yeah, no, that's so well put. You mentioned guys having to wait far too long. Obviously, here, all eyes every year are on Joe Jacoby, someone that we've been hoping in DC could get in for years and years and years. Do you think that there needs to be a change to the process, or is the difficulty of getting into the Pro Football Hall of Fame actually why it means so much to guys when they do get in, and thus worth keeping? Well,
first of all, Joe Jacoby is absolutely a Hall of Famer in my opinion. Like, I don't think it's a question. What I would like to see is have more people vote. We have about 50 to 55 voters for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And I think there are, 400 for Major League Baseball? That's far too many. But to me, I think far too few people who really love the game are involved in the process of letting people into the inner circle. And I think if we expanded the number of voters, people who have the right to swing the hammer and create those magical moments, I think you'll see more guys like Jacoby get in. And I would like to see the Hall of Fame voters increase by 10 to 20 people, or maybe even as much as 30. And I think there are a lot of viable candidates out there who study the game, who are historians of the game, that I think would understand the responsibility.
Yeah, no, that's very well put. Also, I think for us in Washington, knowing some of who has been doing the presenting the last 2 decades, perhaps the new regime has more benefits than people realize for people that have been long gone from here. But that's a different topic for a different day. Trey Wingo's with us here on the Hoffman Show. Last Hall of Fame question for you real quick, and then get to the guys still playing. You obviously covered a lot of these guys over your careers, the Joe Thomases, the Zach Thomases, DeMarcus Ware, Darrelle Revis, Rondé Barber, these guys, the more modern players, if you will. Any particular story from anyone in this Hall of Fame class that really sticks with you, that you just have a great story about that guy?
Well, Joe, obviously the number of Joe Thomas, the number of snaps played, just the consecutive number of snaps played, and not games played, but number of snaps. Like, you never missed a snap. Like, that's ridiculous, right? And I had Mitchell Schwartz on Half Forgotten History Pod once when he was playing for the Browns. And they had an assistant coach. The game was won. It was the time when the Cleveland Browns didn't win a lot. So they wanted to rest their starters and all this kind of stuff. And this assistant coach said, yeah, you go in for Mitchell and you go in for Joe. And this guy ran onto the field and Joe said, get the hell out of here, man. Like, no, you're not taking me out of this game. I got a friggin' streak of forever. Like, and the guy said, but coach said to come in. And Joe's like, I don't care. I'm not leaving. Go away. So the guy had to like slink back to the sidelines. And the assistant coach at the time then found out about the streak that Joe Thomas was going on. But the other great Joe Thomas story I'll tell real quick is that, in the last couple of years, the Broncos really wanted to trade for Joe. Like, they really wanted to trade for Joe to help solidify the line behind Peyton Manning. And Peyton Manning called him and said, look, man, we really want you to ask for a trade because we're going to win a Super Bowl here. And they did go on to win a Super Bowl that year. We're going to do this. We're going to get it done. And you're the linchpin. You're going to be the thing that solidifies the line and it's going to put us over the edge. And Joe's like, I'm just not comfortable asking for a trade. I've been in Cleveland my whole life. I want to finish the job. I want to be here when the turnaround is. So I'm just not going to go force a trade. And Peyton said to Joe, all right, then fine, just do this. Go up into the office of the general manager and take a dump on his desk. Then you're not asking for a trade. You just do this and he will automatically trade you if you just drop a deuce on the general manager's desk. And Joe's like, I'm absolutely not dropping a deuce on the general manager's desk in Cleveland to force him to trade me out for soiling his papers. That's one of my all-time favorites.
That is, I mean, in all honesty, that's kind of cheating. That's more of a Peyton Manning story than a Joe Thomas story, but it's a great story.
But it involves Joe Thomas.
We'll take it. It does speak well of Joe Thomas's loyalty. And that's a good one. Didn't see that one coming. Trey Wingo with his stories here with us.
The general manager probably wouldn't have seen it coming out.
Well, he would have smelt it, but that's a different story. All right. The Commanders are in a very, very tough division as we take things on the field for a few more minutes here, Trey. Very, very tough division in the NFC East, but one where you never have the same team win the division 2 years in a row. The Eagles look very poised to break that. I think every team, it's seemingly outside of Philly, has some major questions. How do you see this division stacking up? And do you think the Commander, I mean, a lot of people just go ahead and plug the Commanders in the bottom. Are you amongst that list of people?
I think realistically you have to walk into it thinking that way. I think that you have to say that look, I don't know. I do think there's a cloud that has been lifted from the franchise that they will respond favorably to. Okay. It's a weight that they don't have to deal with anymore. And and in football, Craig, as you know, little things sometimes go a long, long way. And I think that is something that might just be something that just can give them something that they just didn't have before, was this little thing called hope. And like, what are we going to read about next and what's going? That's gone. But I do think I do think that right now you have to stack them as 4. But like you said, the best team usually never repeats in this division. And there are questions about the Eagles. They've lost some depth. They've lost both of their coordinators. How is that going to change things? And the last team to repeat was the Eagles, who had 4 straight years or 3 straight years in the late 90s, early 2000s. The Cowboys are fascinating to me because I don't think there's a middle ground for Dallas. I think they're going to be very good, or I think they're going to fall apart. Because if they don't get it done this year, Dak's deal has to get redone one way or another, as in, okay, things are progressing. He's not going to lead the league in interceptions anymore. And we need to tear it up and get it to more team-friendly cap number. Or, well, that didn't work. We're going to blow it up. So I think the Cowboys will either blossom or they will explode. And I don't think there's any in between with them. And quite frankly, I don't know what to expect from the Giants. Daniel Jones got his contract. Saquon signed the thing with a little extra money. But, the owner of the Giants has already gone out there and basically said about the head coach, hey, I've seen a lot of people have one good year, but to be successful in this league, you got to sustain it. And which I thought was a very honest thing, but also a very unusual thing for an owner to say about the head coach that everyone thought was just the greatest thing in the world when he got in there. So the NFC East is always interesting, and I'm not putting anything past the possibilities of happening.
How much of an impact do you believe Bieniemy is capable of having here?
That's a really interesting question because there were people in Kansas City and around the league that said, yeah, Eric's done a really good job there, but it's really Andy's offense. And look at the weapons. So I don't know the answer to that question because I haven't seen him outside the system yet. And like the fairest way to say it is that when Peyton Manning went from Indianapolis to Denver, he was the same player, right? Mm-hmm. When Tom Brady left New England and went to Tampa Bay, he was the same player. So that it translated, right? Their success and their ability was with them wherever they went. When Deion Sanders was the best cornerback in football, it doesn't matter who he played. He was still going to be that guy. So I think that the fairest way to answer that question is we'll find out the answer this season because Mahomes is not the quarterback and Andy Reid is not the head coach. And they don't have a Travis Kelce, and they don't have all these other things. So I think the only way I can fairly answer that question is to say I'll tell you in 17 games.
Well, that doesn't help me feel content for the next 17 weeks. I don't know, guys. Talk to you in January, but it's fair. What I think is interesting, though, Trey, and the last thing on the way out is being able to watch it up close, going to training camp, and watching the spring practices. It is, I don't want to say crazy, wild. It is noticeable, and is something that has certainly been a topic here. How much control Bieniemy has been given by Ron Rivera. And the only other example I've heard of something similar to this was a very different set of circumstances where Marvin Lewis basically ran the team while Steve Spurrier was practicing his golf swing up on the hill when he was here as the head coach. But that was a different set of circumstances. Is there someone in your career that you've heard of as a coordinator that had on one side of the ball, for whatever reason, just what felt like an outsized level of control, even if they were super competent and perhaps deserved it, and it was actually the best thing for the team? Because I think a lot of people here would obviously say what Bieniemy's bringing is definitely the best thing for the team.
Yeah, look, I think more importantly to what I think that tells you what Ron thinks, right?
Yeah.
And if Ron is that comfortable with it, I think that should be something that makes Washington football fans feel comfortable. And, everything about Washington football feels comfortable again, right? That, like the lines to get into the training camp and practices as opposed to what they've been the last couple of years has been ridiculous. It's just, there's a whole new sort of revelation going on. But at the end of the day, there is the line that says, it's not about the X's and O's, it's about the Willies and Joes. And I'm not sure I totally believe in that because I do think coaching, putting players in position to succeed is important and it does matter. But we are talking about a coordinator who left Patrick Mahomes and is coming for Sam Howell, right? There's a difference.
Yes.
So so he's going to have to scheme it up. He's going to have to scheme it up to find things that will give Sam confidence early that hopefully translates into him blossoming into the quarterback that the team hopes he can be.
Yeah, to tie it all together, you talk about football being a total team game that does go beyond the 11 on the field. Scheme can elevate players, but players can also elevate scheme. And when it's Patrick Mahomes, he elevates whatever you're doing quite a lot because, well, frankly, he plays outside of it. All the off-schedule stuff that he does is just outrageous. All right, the new podcast coming this fall, Making Waves from Trey Wingo. What else do you got going on in the meantime if people want to check it out? What you got, Trey?
Yeah, well, there'll be another announcement soon about another pod with with an NFL player. So I can't say that yet, but it's coming. So I'll be happy to come back and come on the show and talk about that.
Done and done.
I'm also continuing my work with the 33rd team. I'm also continuing my work with Pro Football Network. And Mark Schlereth and I, former member of the Hogs, are doing a weekly show on an app called The Stunt, which is basically sort of TikTok for sports only. And you can come on there and you can create your own show, draft your own live rooms. It's the Stunt app. It's available in the Apple Store, App Store or also in Google Play. And it's just a format that's completely dedicated to nothing but sports talk. And we're going to be hosting a weekly show on that during the season. So go download the app and check it out, and we'll let you know when the show is on our socials.
That is very cool. Anytime you and Stink get together is always a good time. And I have it on good authority, although I shouldn't say too much, but somewhere early in the regular season, Stink will be having an up-close look at the Washington Commanders. I'm not going to, we're just going to keep moving past that, but I have it on good authority that is going to be the case. Trey Wingo, everybody. Trey Wingo, everybody, with us here on The Hoffman Show.
This is The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.